It's not us versus them or me versus you.
So we're not talking about an us versus them mentality. We're going for this versus that.
This versus that.
Yeah, okay.
I think it helps you get along better.
game.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes
We get along so well, and sometimes you're extreme right, I'm extreme left, I'm liberal, you're a conservative, and yet we get along so well. That's marvelous, wonderful.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Amazing grace.
So today,
Saved a wretch.
like you. So today, what we're going to do.
That's good. Come on, talk to me. Get into that microphone.
What we're going to do is trying to give you a little example
An
of
example. Give me an example of
this versus that thing.
would he have said,
didn't want
come
to
on,
know.
Hillary, vote for me, baby.
No.
No.
I
wasn't
well, I
doing
don't
that.
know. I don't know about that. Allegedly, y'all can hear us. Hear us. They can see? Okay, good, very good. So we are up and running like one of those, I'm not even going to say it. There we go. We're live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to This Versus That. Coming to you from a little rainy drops in Pensacola, but we have Daryl and his wife Tina. They're literally in a van. They had to run from Hurricane Laura. They have had no lights, and now they're on the way home, and they just found out they have lights.
That's good.
It's good.
So, Daryl, you live in a van down by the river. Is that correct, you and Tina?
Right at the moment, I do.
That's funny.
Okay. Yeah. Do that again.
We live in this van right by the Concho River here in San Angelo.
That is too cool. Okay.
We're glad that y'all made it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I was thinking about my dad this morning. He had a Tioga camper. It was really nice. And it had a spare tire on the back of it. The words on there was roughing it smoothly. And that's kind of what we've been doing. Yeah, we have needed, but don't feel too sorry for us. We've been visiting with family, and I'll have to admit we've had it pretty nice. I have no complaints.
And now,
Roughing it.
are y'all hopping off of Popeye's Wi-Fi?
We are. Popeye, get your chicken there. They would appreciate it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Popeye is providing Wi-Fi today for Daryl.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
pretty cool. Like we said, they're coming back from having to evacuate for Hurricane Laura. And my goodness, that was a crazy monster hurricane-looking thing.
I mean, it was a big storm, but it did not, touch down as much as what they thought. And so that's one of the many things that people need to know about hurricanes. They can measure the wind at a 150 miles an hour, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be that way all the way around the eye. It may touch down occasionally, or it may not get below, let's say. It may not. Well, it may be 50 feet, 100 feet up, 150 feet up, or whatever. And so the winds are almost like a ping pong ball, up and down during a hurricane. Unlike a tornado, but they do a lot of damage because they carry tornadoes with them and all kinds of stuff. And the barometric pressure dropping so low causes a lot of problems. It does cause a lot of problems. Boy, I'm having a problem speaking. Maybe it has something to do with lack of coffee or too much.
Probably lack thereof. But we have some fresh, and I hope.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
It is good.
Yeah, I'm going. I
Hey,
can't.
we
Yeah,
had,
making my noise.
One of our
I beg your pardon?
one of our sons evacuated up to Nashville to stay with his twin brother,
Nice.
and we called him to see how it was going up there, and that was a couple of days ago. And he said, "Well, right now I'm hunkered down. There's a tornado headed for us," and it's from that same. He didn't get far enough away in Nashville,
No.
but the tornado never touched down, so they were okay, and we were glad, of course.
I thought about that too when it showed kind of
Crazy.
how it was going to go, and I'm like, oh man, it's hard to run from them sometimes.
Right.
It's hard to know where exactly.
Well,
to go.
we got far enough away because here in San Angelo they're rationing water. They're extremely dry, but in the forecast they've got rain coming supposedly Tuesday, so we're happy for them.
Oh man, yeah.
I've got a curiosity question for you before you go. I know that you just have a few minutes with us since you're in a van down by the river, right? But I wrote something on our Facebook wall this week, and it's out of curiosity because so many people have been outspoken concerning Trump, outspoken concerning this and that. And I would even say that people have become extremely radical. And so we have the radical left, maybe the radical right, not a lot of balance going on out there. And so the reason that I wrote what I did, I think it's going to be telling when I read it, so I will just read it. I said, out of curiosity, Hillary, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton, the one who did not win in 2016, told Biden via a television interview, told Biden not to concede even if he loses the election. And so if Biden did not concede and was told not to concede, what would that look like and why would she say that? The second point is, and Nancy Pelosi is telling Biden, and she does this via a major network, right? She tells Biden not to debate Trump, stating that there is nothing at all about what Trump says that is true. And so it reminds me of a lot of what I heard in Sunday school. There's no one good, no, not one. And so the Democrats have their two top. They are probably the top of the ticket. Hillary is a lot more popular than Biden. She has more power than Biden anyway. And Nancy Pelosi, she's in line to become president. That is, if we didn't have, let's say, someone elected sometime in January, she could become our president. And so what's really going on? And so do these women actually represent the current narrative of the party that uses an inflection of democracy as their branding? And is that party standing for democracy or Marxism or something else? What say you, Daryl?
My answer would be kind of varied. It would be, I would answer in a number of ways. Number one, in my personal viewpoint, if that was my two top people in the party, I would be extremely concerned, number one. Then number two, I would seriously hope that this doesn't represent the thinking of the whole party, and obviously it doesn't, because I've heard many who are leaving that party, or at least temporarily, whether it's but they don't like what's going on, and they don't want to see happen what they feel like will happen if it comes into power. Thirdly, I would say, no, this doesn't represent for sure what this country is about. If you're going to lose an election and then refuse to say you lost it, because we have a system that's been in place for a number of years, and until we change it legally, until we come together and do it the way this country's always done things in a democratic fashion, then it needs to continue. And if the time comes when we agree, no, this doesn't work, we need something more socialistic, Marxist, communist, whatever direction that we might decide to go as a country, then we'll be stuck with that. But until that happens, then we need to operate within the guidelines of what's been established. And that's my biggest concern right now, because that's not happening in a lot of our cities. Anytime you can go and you can break windows out, you can set buildings on fire, you can attack policemen, and there's no consequences, then we've already seen a giving in to something that is not a part of what this country's about. That's a big concern to me. And there's one party that seems to be turning a blind eye to that. I think something was finally been said in the past few days, an acknowledgement that this was actually happening in these cities. I can say it's about time, and I can also say it's a little bit late.
Considering that they never said a word about it during the DNC. So I've been told, obviously. I didn't catch the whole thing.
Okay, now we do have an individual that is in the thread of this live show who states, and this is Dinah Cat Loves Me, a debate with Trump can't happen, not even if they both show up and answer stupid questions. And so I'm just kind of curious as to what is the predicate of what you're suggesting. And if you would answer, I will be glad to read that.
Yeah, but I just don't want you to make fun of Biden about the debate. Okay, Dinah Cat, just don't make fun of him about that. That's all I ask. It's sad. Enjoy.
Well, I can appreciate this. I was able to catch a little news yesterday, and I would say the president, I don't care if it's Trump or someone with another name, I would say they have a pretty busy schedule. That, you know, their job is not playing golf and relaxing and, you know, just shooting the breeze. I think they've got their hands full. Even if the country is experiencing good times and there's no pandemic, there's no rioting in the streets, there's none of the things that we see right now. But it's encouraging to me when the president will take time out of his schedule and fly into a disaster zone and sit down with the local people and brag on them about the job they're doing and bring everything that the federal government can bring to bring relief to the thousands of people there that are suffering. And it was that was very encouraging for me to watch. So
I get what you're saying. Now, let me see if I can quote Biden. He stated, I think the only reason Clarence Thomas is on the court, it's because he's black. Now, Biden is running based upon, this is the guy that we need in there because we don't need racism. Now, Biden was against busing. If anyone's ever studied why that was even suggested, they would understand that Martin Luther King was very much a person for shutting down segregation and bringing people together. So equality and equity could have a chance, and that takes time. And so busing was the best approach at the time. And so the question would be, why did Biden fight busing year after year after year? Why did he become so tethered and friendly with people of the KKK and argue their points? Joe Biden said, when you're appealing to people's fears and anxieties, you can make some gains. Is that what Biden is doing today? Biden also said, you got the first mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. That's a storybook, man. Here's a guy who continues to make statements. He says, you cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. This guy is the choice, that is, of the party that's trying to represent, this is the party of equality and equity and all that. And so my question is, why would you put him at the top of that ticket? Wow.
Wait, no. Says that's hugely discriminatory. Are you talking about these things that Joe Biden has said recently and in the past?
But you have to go back and understand, Biden said, I worked in an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington.
Oh, corn pop.
I was involved in what the Negroes, blacks, were thinking, what they were feeling. And so Biden is qualified. He worked at an all-black swimming pool. Think about what he's saying. This is ridiculous. We have
Daryl?
A guy who is so bigoted running for president. Go for it, Daryl.
Well, also according to him, apparently guys like Herschel Walker, Tim Scott, who gave one of the best speeches I've heard in a long time, those guys aren't black. And I don't get that. What does it mean to be black? Apparently, it's not the skin color. Because if you vote for Trump, you're not black, according to Biden. And I think these guys take offense at that. And I think if more understood what he was saying, many would I take offense at that. Mm-hmm. I've got some dear friends that are black, and when you say they're not black because they don't think like I think, I'm not real concerned about that when I build a friendship with somebody. If we don't think exactly alike, my wife and I don't think exactly alike, and it helps us out a lot of times, But, there's just some crazy things going on that people need to really pay attention to, I'm thinking.
As people know on this show, and even when this show is not running, I'm not a Trump fan, but I really question why the top of the ticket, that is of the Democratic ticket, we have a guy who said the next person, and this ticket is all about, we don't need a bully. And this guy states, this is Biden, Joe Biden, the next person that tells me that I'm not religious, I'm going to just shove my rosary beads up their ass.
That would be interesting. Let's get your popcorn.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think he likes.
That's a good religion.
Now, he actually he said, I agree with Donna Brazil, who said about Benghazi, we got to prevent this from happening again. He made fun of her speech.
That?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't even do that. Jeez.
I'm simply saying that this guy is off the ropes.
He is. Off the chain, off the ropes. Extremely racist. Likes pinching little girls' boobies. Sad.
And I'm not sure. If that's when he's coherent or when he's not coherent. It's hard to tell because everyone knows he's struggling. And I'm not making fun of him. I'm just saying everyone can see that sometimes he's not coherent. You can't even really understand what he's saying. And, my mom was that way at one time. We knew certain things she said she didn't really mean. But it's kind of hard to tell when a person is struggling with issues of memory and memory loss and that sort of thing, is this really where they're coming from? Is this really what is in their heart, in their mind, or which is it? And that's about the best I can do when it comes to Biden. I don't know if he's this racist guy that's coming out, or if these are just things that are kind of out of his control.
No,
that he's saying.
These are most of these have been way back that he said them.
Right.
Way back.
I mean,
He's
a
only
lot.
been in Congress, what, 47 years?
Only 47 years.
That's all.
But the point that I'm making
He's gonna
today,
fix everything
when
now.
he was supposedly in his right mind, and I'm not a Trump fan at all. I'm simply questioning why in the hell are people voting for Biden? When asked about Defense Secretary Ashton Carter's wife, that is when he put his hands all over her, and the only thing that you have to do is just watch the footage. You have to play it over and over again and just ask yourself, why wasn't he kicked out of his office? I mean, why did women not get just upset about this? I don't get why he can just touch person after person, female after female, little kids like he does. He gets away with it. He should be in jail, people. Listen to this. When asked about this, he said, I did not grope the wife of Defense Secretary Ashton Carter or the daughter of Senator Christopher Coons. I don't put drugs in drinks or give drinks to underage females.
That's nice of him.
And all these photos about me inappropriately touching girls, they're all blown up. Now, just go back and just look at the footage and say to yourself, or ask yourself this question: do we want someone who does this, that is, as our next president? I'm just asking the question. I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm certainly not a fan of what the Democrats are pushing.
Are you a Joe Biden fan?
No.
I didn't. All right.
I'm
I know
simply
you're not,
saying that
but-
it's like we have this guy he's a bigot
Definitely.
and he's a bully. I
Definitely.
mean, he was pushing around that guy that was almost 90 years old.
Yeah.
And
This is Biden,
what did he
people.
do? He stuck his finger right in the face of a young man who was just asking him a question.
Yeah.
And just got right up in his face and he wanted to whip his ass. I mean, that type mentality. I just don't get that. Why are people so... I mean, it's become almost like they're apologists, not for Jesus any longer, but apologists for Biden. And so lots of atheists are siding with Biden. And I don't get that.
Well-
I thought that atheists would at least be reasonable and come to the table and ask the deeper questions and say, this is not moral. If you think that Yahweh of the Bible is not moral, and he's not.
What's a deep question that you've heard an atheist ask lately?
Oh,
I'm not saying
concerning
they don't.
Biden or
No.
science?
Just no,
I haven't.
concerning the Bible,
I haven't heard any deep question from any atheist ever
concerning literature.
concerning the literature in the Bible. Right. None.
Okay, but why? So why do you expect? I mean, them to have, this Biden, not have this
I'm simply
Biden thing.
saying that when you articulate that your narrative is, well, I'm an atheist because I'm all about I'm in the age of reason, or I'm all about science or whatever, and I'm for a more ethical pathway forward. You want to make all these statements, and yet you want to tap a guy who has been making these remarks, touching people on stage all the time. I mean, the footage is there. It's not a matter of trying to find the truth. Before your very eyes, this guy is all over people left and right. He's out in Utah. He's kissing this young girl that he doesn't know. She's about 13 or 14, right on the mouth. I mean, I don't know why people are not alarmed at that kind of activity. It appalls me when people will defend this kind of stuff. And I think it has a lot to do with branding, because when people are more attached to their branding, they will sell whatever that branding is trying to market. And this is the thing that scares me. And so I'm just asking Daryl some questions about what Biden said.
Well, in my thinking and what I think I'm seeing is a lot of people, unfortunately, I say this hoping I'm wrong, but that sort of thing doesn't even bother them. And I do like, I watched the president give his speech the other night at the convention, and when he's mentioned something about Biden hugging and even kissing, he got a chuckle out of the people in the audience. I think they knew what he meant by that. But that kind of stuff definitely bothers me. It's the best thing you can say about it is very unbecoming. But when there's so much of it, it seems like it's a little deeper than that. It's an issue. It's a promotion. Yeah, we should be concerned.
Okay, when Joe Biden was vice president of these United States, he was asked a question about guns. He said, well, my shotgun will do better for you than an AR-15 because you want to keep someone, he said, because when you want to keep someone away from your house, just fire the shotgun through the door. I mean, that was when he was the sitting vice president of this country. I want you to think about that. And so, you want to keep someone away. He's in favor of taking a shotgun and blowing a hole through the door to keep people away. And then he's at the top of the ticket trying to say, we don't need any violence and all this. It doesn't make sense. Nothing is making sense.
Okay, just a second. Now, come on. That's not fair to say.
What is I'm saying?
He's saying there's so much criticism of Biden on here, so little criticism of Trump on the show. That's not true. Today, yes, he's talking about Biden and being these racist comments, and we were asking people, how can you defend these? How this is about racist comments from Joe Biden today. That's our show. So yeah, today it's going to be a little heavy on Biden, but that's not the way it is on every show. So that's really not fair.
Right. But I get why people are not wanting to listen to what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is I'm not a Trump fan, nor am I a fan of Biden. And people don't get that, because I think that Dr. Alcott is right. Acceptance is the brain's default bias. It's an immediate and automatic reaction that occurs before we have any time to think about the substance that a person is saying. And so people have not given any time, that is, for me to speak concerning why I would not vote for Biden. So what is it? It's all about acceptance. What have they accepted? They have accepted, namely, the narrative of the Democratic Party. And I'm simply here to place a question. I'm not just going to place the question of God. I'm not going to place in question, that is, whether there's a God or not. We talk about that all the time. But my question this morning is, why in the hell are we voting for Biden? That is, if we don't like Trump, why could we not find someone who's at least ethical and sane and not a bigot? I mean, the guy has a history of being intolerant. He has a history of being a bully. He has a history of putting his hands, his mouth, and everything else over women. I just don't get why. You're right. Why are the Democrats and why are so many people defending this guy?
You've heard
it
lots
just
of
doesn't
shows
make
about
sense.
Biden's sexual records. That's totally false. We have hardly ever talked about
speak the truth.
Joe Biden's sexual, because for one thing, that's gross to even put Biden and the word sex in a sentence. So I know I probably haven't talked about it.
Well, it's like this. If you talk about substance like this, and back to Alcott, he makes a statement, makes the points. He said, anytime that you are talking about substance like this, people go to what they've already accepted. This is the issue of confirmation bias. That ability to elevate the falseness of a statement, it comes with a special skill. You have to take and approach this in a very disciplined way. People are not willing to even take time with me. They know that I'm a truth teller. I talk about truth theories all the time. I want to get at something, and this morning I simply want to get at, why are people voting for someone who is so ethically, morally, judicially wrong? I mean, come on, that's a simple question. I'm not for Trump, but I'm certainly not for Biden. My question has to do with something that I wrote on Facebook, and here goes the quote again. Let me look it up. It's right there.
Come on.
Hillary tells Biden not to concede even if he loses the election.
Defend that.
Why is that constitutionally right? I mean, why is that a good thing to do? Why is that that's not even playing ball within the system or the framework of the civil experiment that we have. Nancy Pelosi tells Biden not to debate Trump. We the people don't have a right to hear the two in play. That is the debate. I mean, come on. Why are these people trying to take away the rights of the people? I'm for the people, and what they choose, let the people choose. I'm for the people. And so even one of the biggest anti-Trumpers even said to me about what I asked, this anti-Trumper said, that's a very good question. And so,
Hey, I've got to go.
You're going to have to twist off, right? Hey, we love you guys so very much. I'm glad that you guys got to get out of town when it comes to the hurricane. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad we got a little time with y'all this morning, and hopefully things will be back to whatever normal is.
Daryl, I don't know.
A few days.
Oh, Daryl. All right. Y'all are so sweet. Daryl, I tell you what, if not one thing, he's consistent, loyal, awesome. He and Tina sitting in a Popeyes location, jumping on their Wi-Fi. All right, let's get back to...
Before we leave here, just to thank
Please do.
We love y'all.
We love
We
y'all
love you too. I mean, Biden even states about Obama and Hillary. He said the more people learn about them, Obama and Hillary, and how they handle the pressure, the more their support will evaporate. Those are not my words, friends. Those are the words of Biden. So he's not technically for Obama. This is the crazy thing. When you study, that is his life, and I'm going to come out with a lot of stuff, and a lot of people are going to think, oh, I'm trying to articulate this is a for Trump time. No, it's not. I'm not for Trump, but I'm not for Biden. I'm not for either. And I just don't get why people can't listen, that is, to what someone is saying. In other words, if you're going to vote for Biden, if you're going to vote for Trump, please try to tease out what's there and not there and be honest about your approach. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So I thought I would get a discussion going this morning. Hopefully it wasn't offensive. If you're offended, maybe you need to rethink, that is, your default bias, that is acceptance. I need to rethink my default bias all the time. And this is why, doing things that challenge us to be better at thinking. And we have these default systems that are hardwired into our brains, and in order to get past that, and this is what's very, very dangerous about listening to just one narrative over and over again. It's almost like it scratches the brain so deep we can't get past that irritation. And so I'm simply trying to bring up some ideas this morning about what Mr. Biden has stated in times past and times present, what he's doing, and just trying to get people to rethink, what is there about this guy that was the lure that brought him to the table, that is, being the nominee of the Democratic Party. It doesn't make sense to me. If it does to you, put your argument down to the side. I'm not for Trump. I'm not for Biden. So what say you? Why are you really for either one or neither? Put on the table something good. Lots of silence. Should I keep talking?
No. Well, the thing is, why don't we do a full show criticizing Trump? Well, you read our minds. That's what we're doing next week. Do you think we would just criticize one person and not the other? Come on, man. What Biden says. Come on, man.
I mean, it's almost like when I challenge parents, and this is a case study.
Oh boy.
Well, let me make this statement. It's like when you tell parents, be cautious about giving them responsibilities. Because until children are old enough to make denial assessments, they are especially suggestible and uncritical. And so, what you want to do is you want to make sure that when people are developing, that you don't put too much on them. And too many times we give, let's say, this and that to our children when they don't even have the capacity to deal with it. And when we become adults, there are so many things that we've been dodging we take always the pathway that avoids developing in the areas that we truly need to develop in. And so all of us have those underdeveloped things in our lives. And this is why conversations need to happen, because the conversations will bring some things out in us and it will help us. It will bless us. And so if there is any blessing about being here, it may be that something needs to get up underneath the skin to motivate us to develop a bit where we are underdeveloped. And I have to raise my hand. I'm so underdeveloped in so many different areas. It's unreal. And yes, I do have what I was talking about earlier, that default bias, that is acceptance. I accept something before I have enough time to really check it out.
Yeah,
get under the hood
human.
and get into the details.
I
that's
think
how we're hardwired.
It is, because that's how we survived a long time ago. We had to make a quick decision. We had to, come up with it. And then there's that, when you're making decisions, I think you go through that, flight or fight syndrome, because
right.
You have to make a response. You need to be responsible. And so you make it, and then you sit back sometimes and say, gosh, that was, I do that a lot. And I'm sure y'all know that from watching the show.
But that's the thing that I love about military training. It simply teaches soldiers how to react in a situation they would not handle naturally. So they can go through things that I can't because I'm underdeveloped, right? And so I can talk about things, but I can't get involved in the kind of battles they can and perform. I'm just not developed there. And so this is why training is necessary. This is why, when you want to look at data as opposed to stories, it's very important. And so the military, they understand the data, and so they approach all who join. They try to take a sufficient approach toward that so people don't, do the wrong thing at certain times. And this is, a lot of what's happening that is in America, because we have so many phones that are videotaping this and that, and we capture certain scenes, and we need to have time to look at the data. We need to go full circle with all of it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it really, really is important, because, you can make the argument, oh, we watched this video and it suggests X, Y, and Z. Okay.
Yeah, like the 20-second clip. And I'm not saying anything, making a judgment about the recent shooting here that has people going wild in Wisconsin. But I will say that you cannot just look at a 20-second video at the end of something and make these harsh judgments, and then literally, and I'll be honest with you, I'm just going to say it, this is who I am. The Saints put the guy's name, that was shot in the back on all their helmets for whatever. And I just think that's so premature. You know what I'm saying? I wish the guy to recover and be able to walk and whatever. But I also say you can't have these knee-jerk reactions, and that's part where we're talking about. We have those as humans. We have them.
But there is a lot of bias in this conversation, and what I'm trying to unpack here is simply that every time that there is a killing, it's bad. Okay? I would hope that whether it doesn't matter whether it's a justified killing, we should never glory in that. We shouldn't be happy about any kind of killing. And so when we see that is footage of something that takes place, we need to try to get at why did this happen? And that's what law enforcement attempts to do. And there are some incredibly good people in law enforcement. And yet at the same time, there are some people, a small percentage of people there, who are doing, yes, the wrong thing. And the law enforcement people that we know, they're trying to do the right thing. And they have fired a lot of people simply because they were not good. That is, good at doing what we call enforcing a civil experiment or law. And so my wife and I, we hurt every time that we see someone die, get killed, whatever. All of it hurts us. We sympathize. We empathize with the family. And, I couldn't go through what that mother's going through, or the individual who got shot so many times, may not be able to walk again. I empathize. But at the end of the day, we have to take a step back and we have to start making judgments. That is, if we're going to have a civil experiment, we're going to have to make judgments and assess them based upon all the data, not some of the data. And the thing that is really strange is that when 5 people in the police department were killed in Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys wanted to put those 5 officers' names on their helmets. They were not allowed to.
Not allowed to, yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you can take these cops who were shot. That's not allowed,
murdered,
but now you can do this. And so the question would be, what are we doing? I mean, if I were the owner of a football team, I would say, hey, listen, there's not a person out there who doesn't matter. And when people approach me and say Black Lives Matter, they do matter. But there is a difference between saying, hey, I can empathize with that, and I think that's true. There's a difference in saying, let's take that into another realm. That is, let's take this into making it a modality, or let's make it a movement, and then it becomes something different. In other words, it's repurposed, and many people have repurposed that. And that's unfortunate, because the people who have been hurt, disparaged, time and time again, and as all of you guys know, I march for civil rights. I hurt, I empathize. The pain that people have gone through simply because their skin, of their skin color, it's wrong. And we need to be honest enough to say, we've got to do something about this. And I wish at some point in time that we would just say, hey, today all of this stuff ends. And so if the NBA, just shut down the entire season or the next 2 or 3, let's come to an end. I thought back in the late 60s and so on, during my history of marching for civil rights, I thought that we had come pretty close to ending racism. But if it takes another time to go through this, to put an end mark on racism, I'm very much in favor of that. And so whatever we have to do to put an end to racism, that is, if we can take a good approach, something that's ethical, something that's moral, something that's honest, something that's good, not just for one person, but for every human being on the planet, we should do that. But let's take an ethical, reasonable, kind, patient, and understandable approach. Let's not just be crazy. Let me read something that comes from Ozymandias, because people are being pushed around, and I'm talking about pushed around big time. There was a young lady who was sitting, that is, in a restaurant, minding her own business, and many of you guys have seen this. You can just look it up. It's a viral video of white protesters yelling at a restaurant patron to support Black Lives Matter. Now, Ozymandias, he wrote this.
Does that say that in the...
Yeah. It's in the description of the article in the Business Insider. And so...
Different one than I saw, okay.
Okay. Now, it may have different titles, depends on who's publishing the YouTube video.
But it was different instances.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But Ozzy stated this, and I applaud Ozzy for writing the following. He said, I have watched a few recorded instances of this recent strategy where a large group of woke, W-O-K-E, activists descend upon people peacefully minding their own business in a restaurant or cafe. Their aim is twofold. First, to intimidate those whom they have physically surrounded and trapped into some verbal or symbolic act of obedience. And second, to signal all onlookers and viewers of such videos that the way to avoid such unpleasantness and potential threats is to immediately comply. In some of these videos, one can see other patrons looking down or away from the cameras, shamefaced, as they timidly raise their fist and feign solidarity, an act that signals no genuine allegiance, but rather, please don't hurt me. And so what Ozzy's saying is these people are raising their fist in solidarity, simply saying, please don't hurt me. To make the point, that is the true message. You don't have to get on board, but you must play the part. Your sincerity is not required, only your craven submission. Only your craven submission. One must tip one's hat to those few brave individuals who, whatever their political sympathies happen to be, categorically refuse to comply with such coercive and bullying demands. The unmistakable mark of authoritarianism in this recent plague of wokeists is that they are not motivated by a desire to persuade, but by their demands for obedience via intimidation. And he says, cheers, Ozzy.
Yeah.
I thought Ozzy really nailed the issue
You
because
did.
instead of elevating the conversation, it's almost as if we're going to overcome, and we're going to overcome by whatever means. And that is a dangerous approach. And the better approach would be to sit down, have conversations, to be level-headed, and try to get at the problems and have discussions knowing full well what and how human brains work and function. And so you're going to meet people in life who don't think like you, and this is why we need a tolerant society instead of an intolerant society. Everyone is not on the same page.
True.
And so we need to learn how to deal with other cultures, people who don't think like we do.
Yeah.
And we need to learn how to accept diversity for what it is. It doesn't mean that to accept diversity for what it is doesn't mean to say, it doesn't mean that you're agreeing with it. It simply means that you can accept it for what it is. And then you take a pathway of learning how to talk about this and that instead of making it an us versus them mentality approach.
And I will say about all the scenes of, outside diners being accosted by whether it's, rioters or Antifa or Black Lives Matter, Inc., whatever, and saying, raise your hand in solidarity or denounce Christianity or, they're making them do all kinds of things. And I told you the other day, I said if we were eating outside somewhere and someone came to our table, I would literally take a beat down before I would capitulate. I mean, what would you do?
I would try to have a reasonable conversation with them, but I get
That's
this.
ridiculous.
And I saw a young lady the other day. She approached the young man that I sent you. That is, he was. I'm trying to think of his name. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Let me pull him up. He was walking outside of, he's Kentucky's Attorney General, Daniel Cameron. After he spoke.
Oh, yeah, he was awesome.
Okay. He walked outside and he was just shamed. I mean, it wasn't like, let me say something. Others walked outside and people were saying, you better confess this or else we're going to hurt you, even threaten. Rand Paul, excuse me.
And his wife
Dr.
and
Paul,
two female.
right. Their lives were threatened, that is verbally, and the pushing, police had to intervene. This is wrong. It's wrong to push violence. And so...
And spitting on people and
right.
the older people were mortified. It was...
This is something that I would always go back to. If you're out on the streets and you want to say something, find someone who desires to talk about the substance. Find someone who knows something about the substance. And I would bet that there are a lot of people who know a lot about the substance of what you want to talk about, and they will talk. And it may be true that you're out there and you may not know as much as they do. And when I was young, I made so many mistakes. That is, by getting involved in movements and trying to say yes, yes. And I was all about yes, yes, because, you feel the fire. You really do. Mm-hmm. You feel the passion. You want to say, this is what I'm for, this is what I'm for. But the older that I get, I realize that I wasn't competent, that is, to handle the many, many questions that should have been asked of me. And so this is why my position today is much different. I don't think that the kind of marches that were done in times past, I'm not convinced that is what settled anything. I think that if we would have taken a different approach, we would have this situation in hand by now. But simply because no one was understanding. Let me give an example. I was marching for civil rights. I was in the streets. And as you know, very well aware of, I was very much for the Martin Luther King movement because, he was out there stating something that was very clear. He was a very clear-minded individual. And here I am walking, but I'm walking next to other people. And I'm walking next to other people, and they were shouting. I'm not talking about a little bit. I'm talking about they were shouting. Some of them were shouting in a belligerent way. We shall overcome. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what that means is we're no longer going to be, under your thumb or under your shoe. But when I started maturing, when I became a linguist, I started understanding that, hey, people in their homes, when they heard us walking by, they could have taken it differently.
True.
They could have taken that as a threat. And so...
Wait. You're not trying to equate that to...
No, I'm simply saying the marches that I was involved in, and I call them peaceful.
Do you think
because
that they're similar to the marches?
No. I'm saying that the peaceful marches that I was involved in, no one was swinging their fist or hollering out incendiary remarks at anyone, but people were passionate in the streets. But even when we were marching, I remember I said, and I asked one gentleman next to me, and I hugged his neck. I said, it may be true that a lot of people are not ready for what's being stated. It may be true that we need to sit down and have conversations. Instead of just being out here up in their face, they might get just afraid and panic, and they may retreat. And you might not be able to have a conversation with them ever. And so I was torn. I didn't know what to do. And so I realized that at that time in my life, I had not developed, I had not acquired the knowledge set, the skill set that is in order to be able to talk about this efficiently. And most of the people that I marched with, they were not articulate, that is, as to be able to responsibly answer things. And I'm simply saying that I was not articulate at that time. And so, it takes time. And this is why, I so wish that people would hear me when you're marching and you have the most peaceful thing that you believe that you're saying. And I believe that we were saying everything just right. But also remember how people were reacting. I can remember their faces. They were shocked. They didn't know what was happening. And so however they interpret it means a lot. It doesn't mean that they interpreted me rightly, but it means that their misinterpretation may continue this problem. Do you see where I'm going?
Sure.
And
sure,
so my point is,
absolutely.
this whole thing needs to be thought out. What about those people who hear and they feel as if, wow, you're coming against me, and they feel offended? And there's a lot of wisdom that we find within the biblical corpus. An offended city if an offended person is very much like a fenced city.
Yeah, it's hard to win.
And so, after someone becomes offended, it's so difficult to be able to talk to them. And I'm simply saying that I don't think that the pathway forward is just getting together and shouting and protesting to the degree that we have in the past, even when it's in the most pleasing of ways. And there is a time, certainly, for protests. But I think that if we will study, that is, the evolution, namely of our species, sometimes we overreach, we overdo things. We get into these modes of chant, and we see the repurposing of meaning. We see the misunderstanding of what was intentionally said, and sometimes it starts its own narrative in and of itself. It's crazy how people do this, and so I'm not convinced that people are psychologically stable enough to handle, that is, the kind of protesting that we try to say that is legal. I don't know that there are any studies, that is, in psychology, that one could do that would say that there is sufficient reason to believe that when you do these protests, that it's going to have meaningful change, that is, within that particular generation. But there are enough studies that have been done that would indicate that if we sit down and we attempt to have conversations that are peaceful, and we can come and arbitrate, we can come and try to get at what is this and that without equivocating, I think that people can come closer to a place called peace, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, I'm picking on myself because I understand what it means to get all fired up and want to go out in the streets and say, hey, listen, we need civil rights, and we certainly did. I understand what it means to say, well, we don't need this Vietnam War. I was there. I didn't want the war. I was very outspoken. But there were so many things that I didn't know when I was saying all kinds of things. I was passionate. I think my emotions were dictating most of what I thought was true. But after careful study and consideration, if I could do it all over again, I would take a much, much different pathway. I would do it and approach certain people, because there is a way to move the herd. There is a way to move the herd without hurting the herd. And that's what you're doing. That is, when you are trying to debate. This is not ever about all of the herd really coming to an understanding. It's about herd instinct. And when you study a little bit about herd instinct and how to move the herd, you're not going to be one that's just trying to push the protest narrative as it is today, or even as it was back when I was marching. And so I really regret, that is, I don't regret trying to do everything that I could for civil rights, because I want civil rights to be there for all. But I think that my approach needed to be different, and I would have encouraged other people to be different. So it's a confession on my part. That's why I'm saying that when...
Confession.
Do I?
So that was a mighty long confession.
Yeah, it's a long confession.
So
but I'm just saying
you
that
need to get it off your chest.
Yeah, this is why, when I see, you can just start chant. It's kind of like if you're out in the streets and you're chanting, let's end poverty. Well, I've never met a person who didn't want to do away with poverty. But when you're just out there just chanting end poverty, what you're doing is you're pissing people off. You're not dealing directly with what's going on. And so there are people who feel like, I feel like I need to do this. And typically people have these things that go on, especially when we're young and when we're adults, where we're underdeveloped. We have these oppositional disorders. We oppose all kinds of things.
Sure.
And we oppose things because we're so underdeveloped in so many different areas.
I
And so
agree.
when I ask people when they oppose something that I've researched for 20 or 30 years,
Right.
ask me a question, I can when I hear the question, I have to ask myself the question. I may not want to respond
Right, because you're
and
afraid
ask
what you're
them
gonna
what
say.
case studies they have
Yeah.
looked at that would suggest that what they're articulating is good or not. I
Well,
typically don't ask those questions.
sometimes I just do
I'm
it
gonna be pie on the
for
face.
the hell of it.
No,
This-
you don't want to do that.
I
Make
didn't say
people
I
feel
wanted
good.
to do it, but sometimes I just do it to be this pure ornery, which is sad, which is immature, underdeveloped, blah blah blah. But I think that's a human condition.
Well, I'm saying that sometimes, people are raised to feel like freedom is just, I have a right to speak. Freedom of speech, I think, is really misunderstood. You may have a legal right to speak, but the question is, do you have an ethical right to speak, a moral right to speak? Do you have a developmental right to speak? You need to ask more questions than just, do you have a legal right to speak? And because too many times we're speaking out of immaturity, and what that will do, it will come back on us. Because once we start confessing, especially if we start chanting X, Y, and Z, we will fight for that thing to be true, whether it's true or not, because we will get into a denial state, and this is dangerous. This is why I'm trying to encourage people. If I could take all the people protesting and say, hey, I want to put you in school, study
Do you
for
realize
10
that
to 20 years.
some of them are in school? That's part of the problem, I think.
No. But
Yeah.
well, I'm simply
Right now.
saying that our educational systems have
It's
lost.
crumbling,
Okay,
yes.
but what we see on the streets for the most part is dysfunctionality. No one's talking about it. That's alarming. And so when you have a group of people who can't empathize with a young lady who's simply sitting at the restaurant table, they can't empathize with her. They can't say, well, you can't just sit there and have a good meal and enjoy yourself. You've got to raise your fist in solidarity to what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
no.
I don't
No,
even
thanks.
know. I don't even know this group. They're just coming in off the
I
street.
don't know them either. That's
And
why
so
I said
I
it
don't
could be
even-
this, that. It could be just a neighbor. Who knows?
And I'm just
I
saying, when
don't
you
know.
start chanting just one or two words or 4 or 5 words, and you want me to repeat
That's
after
all they
you,
know.
it's dangerous. But a lot of them may be well read, but it doesn't work that way. It's not functional.
No. Washington, D.C. is this beautiful town, city, whatever you want to call it, or whatever. And I remember when I was younger, our families would go and we'd walk forever. You just walk everywhere you go. And now, if we went to Washington, D.C., I would be terrified to go there and, see the sights again, and absolutely terrified.
We leave so much unvetted information tagged as true in our brains. Think about it. How many things do we hear on a daily basis that's completely unvetted? And, one of the great things about social media is that, someone can say something. And this has been the wonderful thing about social media, when people are talking about religious orientation and one person says this, and it's just out there, and it's unvetted, and someone says, well, that's not true. Well, that's a good conversation. And so it pushes back on all of this unvetted information. And so when people start having conversations, that's really good and healthy for society. But before
Conversations.
you can, right.
Yes.
But before you can get to where you can accept and negotiate and mediate, you have to understand what's already nested. And that means that you need to build yourself up. In a sense, that sounds very biblical. You need to orient yourselves, gird up your loins. That's funny. That's too funny. No, but you need to build a good psychological framework for yourself.
Yeah, good luck.
And because, a person who's healthy psychologically can work with the consensus. Our law, our military, they're fighting for a consensus. And the consensus would be based upon, that's how we make up our laws. It's consensus theory, right? And it has coherence to it, right? And it does correspond to a degree. And so we have these three different theories of truth that we're working with. That is, and this is why we have our young men and women in uniform fighting for the freedom that we have in this country. And we have a framework to work with, and it's called the Constitution. And then, if you don't understand how to interpret it, you need to get someone to interpret it for you. That's why we have a Supreme Court and all that. And so you need to learn how to deal with that and what is the language there. And it may be true that what you're protesting is like when they were protesting Rand Paul the other day. He said, I didn't get it because everything that they were saying, I've already done.
Right, they said
that was the irony of
ignorant.
it.
They said, say her name, and it's Breonna Taylor,
Right.
and
he
he's
was
the guy that came up with the law, for warrant service.
Right. So he's fighting
ignorant.
for the very things that they were trying to push him
he's
into.
their champion,
right?
And
they threatened to kill him.
Stupid.
They threatened to whip his ass and all that, and
ignorant.
But we don't. I don't want to shame those in the streets. That's what I don't want to do. I want to encourage, if I can, that is, people to be kind and understanding and try to open up your mind. That's a difficult thing to do. It's easy to say. It's hard to do. It's hard for me, that is, to get past my brain's default bias. And what is that? It's called acceptance. That's what the brain goes to. We accept this and that based upon what? Oh, we haven't done the research. We haven't done anything. We just accept it. That's the way we grew up. That's the way my mom and dad did it. And we just accept it. I mean, we're oriented in that, and I get that. But if we get that part of it, we should understand, well, the way that you grew up and the way I grew up are different. And so these things clash when we come together. And so we have to work that out.
Yeah,
and
we
so
do.
When you work that out, that means that you have the willingness to work out something that's deeply nested in you and deeply nested in me and others. And that's not simple to do. It takes time. It takes a lifetime. And so I think that we're trying to do things too quickly. And I understand, the passion, the emotion that's behind a lot of this. I get that emotion comes because there's just a lot of pain out there. And I feel for the people who have gone through pain on any level. And so please understand that I'm for equality, equity, and all that. But there's a better way of turning this thing around. And yes, we're going to have to address what is there, and let's move it forward. Let's put an end to it. But the end can't come by taking the wrong pathway. It's got to be.
Good last point. All right, it's already 11.
I'm talking too
Good
much.
job. No, you did great. That
No,
was
I get
good
that.
information. Good information. Okay, people, next week we're going to do a whole show dedicated to criticizing our president, 45, Trump,
45.
Donald J. It's going to take me all week long to try to find some things, but I'm going to do my best to come up here.
Okay, I have plenty of things that I can critique concerning Trump.
Okay.
And just as I'm
going to do my best.
critiqued Biden, and I'm just asking why? I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just trying to raise some questions. So I will raise questions next week. My concerns about Trump as well. And so hopefully most people will be patient, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
They should be. It's hard, though. Okay, well, we'll see you next week, and come with all your Trump ammunition, and we will too. And we'll see you then. All right, bye. It's not us versus them or me versus you.
So we're not talking about an us versus them mentality. We're going for this versus that.
This versus that.
Yeah, okay.
I think it helps you get along better.
game.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes
We get along so well, and sometimes you're extreme right, I'm extreme left, I'm liberal, you're a conservative, and yet we get along so well. That's marvelous, wonderful.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Amazing grace.
So today,
Saved a wretch.
like you. So today, what we're going to do.
That's good. Come on, talk to me. Get in that microphone.
What we're going to do is trying to give you a little example
An
of
example. Give me an example of
this versus that thing.
would he have said,
didn't want
"Come
to
on,
know.
Hillary, vote for me, baby"?
No.
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 He wasn't
I don't
doing
know. I don't know about that.